All right, you money-hungry bastards, let's cut the crap. Today, we're diving deep into the world of those filthy rich pricks. You know, the HNWIs, high net worth individuals, the ones swimming in cash while the rest of us are scraping by. We're gonna rip the mask off these fuckers and see what makes them tick.
Well, it's not as simple as just being rich. The SEC, those guys who supposedly regulate the financial world, define an HNWI as anyone with over $1 million in assets, excluding their primary residence, of course.
A measly million. Shit, that barely gets you a decent apartment in some cities these days. You're telling me that's all it takes to join the elite club?
Hold your horses. The financial industry uses a slightly different definition. They include the primary residence, and even that overpriced art collection these guys love to brag about. Plus, the SEC counts assets held jointly with a spouse. So it's not always about individual wealth. Sometimes it's about who you married.
So basically, you need a loaded spouse or a Picasso hanging on your wall to even sniff the HNWI club. What a bunch of bullshit. But let's talk about the real big shots. The VHNWIs and UHNWIs. Those are the fuckers with more money than they can even count, right?
Exactly. A VHNWI, or very high net worth individual, needs at least $5 million to play in that league. But the UHNWIs, the ultra high net worth individuals, those are the real money bags. They're sitting on a cool 30 million or more.
30 million, fuck me. What the hell do these people even do with that kind of cash? I mean, besides swimming in it Scrooge McDuck style.
Well, according to the World Ultra Wealth Report, there were over 226,000 of these UHNWIs roaming the planet in 2017. And get this, their combined wealth was a mind-blowing $27 trillion.
27 trillion. Jesus Christ, that's more than the GDP of most countries. It's insane how much wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few goddamn individuals.
It really highlights the extreme wealth inequality we're facing. Remember, these UHNWIs make up just 0.0003% of the world's population. That's basically a microscopic sliver of humanity hoarding 13% of the total wealth.
So while we're struggling to pay rent, these bastards are buying up islands and launching themselves into space. Let's hear some juicy details about how these ultra-rich assholes spend their loot. I bet it's a wild ride.
You're not wrong. Think luxury goods that cost more than our houses. Concierge medicine with doctors on call 24/7, multiple homes and cars. We're talking private jets, yachts, you name it. And don't forget about the offshore bank accounts. Gotta hide that cash from the taxman, right?
Oh yeah, and let's not forget their philanthropy.
Mm.
It's all about those tax write-offs and looking good for the cameras. But seriously, are there any specific brands or industries that cater to these money-hungry monsters?
Absolutely. Think high-end brands like Bentley, Maybach, Rolls-Royce. These guys wouldn't be caught dead in a Toyota. Then there's private banking, where your personal banker probably wipes your ass for you. And there are even magazines specifically for the ultra-rich. Monocle, Robb Report, Worth. It's a whole ecosystem designed to separate these folks from their money.
It's fucking ridiculous. There's a whole industry built around catering to the whims of these obscenely wealthy pricks. But where do most of these HNWIs hang out? Are they all holed up in their ivory towers, sipping champagne and ignoring the rest of us?
Well, according to the World Wealth Report, New York City is the top dog. With over 340,000 HNWIs calling it home, Tokyo comes in second with almost 300,000, followed by the San Francisco Bay Area with 285,000.
Figures. All the places where the cost of living is sky high and you need to be a millionaire just to afford a shoebox apartment. But let's talk about how these bastards actually made their fortunes. It can't all be from trust funds, right?
You might be surprised. According to the billionaire census, a whopping 60% of billionaires are self-made.
Self-made, my ass. I bet most of them started with a hefty loan from daddy or some shady business dealings.
Well, the data shows that their primary sources of wealth are finance, banking, and investment. So yeah, there's definitely some truth to that.
Those Wall Street crooks always find a way to screw over the little guy. But let's break down the average billionaire, shall we? What do they look like? What's their deal?
The billionaire census paints an interesting picture. The average billionaire is 62 years old, mostly male, and holds at least a bachelor's degree.
62 years old, huh? Sounds like a bunch of out-of-touch old farts clinging to their wealth.
Mm.
And mostly dudes. No surprise there. The good old boys club strikes again. But you said finance is their main source of wealth. Shocking. Not.
It's definitely a trend. But let's not forget about the impact these UHNWIs have on the global economy. It's not all about luxury yachts and champagne. They do contribute to things like philanthropy and job creation.
Philanthropy, you mean those tax write-offs disguised as charity? Come on, let's be real. These guys aren't exactly saints. But fine, let's hear about this positive impact they supposedly have.
Well, their spending habits do create jobs, particularly in the luxury sector. And their real estate investments can revitalize certain areas. As for philanthropy, it's a complex issue. Some do it for the tax breaks and PR, but others genuinely want to make a difference.
Yeah, right. And I'm the Queen of England.
Yeah.
But fine, let's give them the benefit of the doubt for a minute. What about the darker side of all this wealth? What about the impact on the rest of us? Does their wealth actually benefit anyone besides themselves?
That's where things get interesting. And that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. We'll unpack the forces shaping this wealth, the rise of globalization, the financialization of everything, and the consequences for the rest of us. Buckle up because it's gonna get dark. All right, let's dig into this shitstorm of wealth inequality and see what's really fueling it. One major culprit is this whole globalization thing.
Globalization, huh? Sounds like a fancy word for shipping jobs overseas and
Mm.
screwing over the working class.
It's more nuanced than that, but globalization has definitely played a role in concentrating wealth at the top. You see, it's created a global marketplace where capital can flow freely, often benefiting those who already have a shitload of it.
So, the rich get richer, while the rest of us are left fighting over scraps.
Yeah.
Classic. But you mentioned something about financialization earlier. What the hell is that? Sounds like some bullshit Wall Street jargon.
It basically means the financial sector is calling the shots, baby.
Cool.
We're talking about the growing dominance of banks, hedge funds, and all those other financial institutions that seem to control the world. Their activities have a huge impact on how wealth is distributed.
No shit. Those Wall Street wolves are always looking for the next big score, even if it means screwing over the rest of us. They gamble with our economy. And when their bets go bad, who gets bailed out? Not the average Joe, that's for sure.
Exactly. The government often steps in to rescue the financial industry. When things go south, you know. While ordinary people are left to deal with the fallout, it's a rigged system that protects the wealthy and leaves everyone else vulnerable.
It's enough to make you want to storm Wall Street with pitchforks and torches. But seriously, what can we do about this fucked up system? Is there any hope for the rest of us?
Well, there are a few things we can try. One is progressive taxation, which basically means making the rich bastards pay their fair share. A more progressive tax system could help redistribute wealth and level the playing field a little bit.
Sounds good to me. Tax those greedy motherfuckers until their wallets bleed. But what about those Wall Street cowboys? How do we stop them from gambling with our lives?
We need stronger financial regulations to rein in those risky practices. That means limiting speculation, increasing transparency, and holding those responsible for financial meltdowns accountable.
It's time to put those Wall Street bastards in their place.
Really?
But what about the people who are already struggling? How do we help them get back on their feet?
Investing in education and social programs is crucial. We need to provide opportunities for everyone, not just the privileged few. That means affordable education, job training, and a safety net for those who fall through the cracks.
So we need to invest in people, not just corporations in the stock market. It's a radical idea. But I'm starting to like it. But how do we get those in power to prioritize the needs of the many, over the greed of the few?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's going to take a massive shift in political will and a fundamental change in societal values. We need to move away from this obsession with material wealth and embrace a more equitable and sustainable vision for the future.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
It feels like we're fighting an uphill battle
So
against a system rigged in favor of the wealthy.
it won't be easy. But throughout history, social movements have challenged the status quo and pushed for progress. We need to harness that same energy and demand change.
So we need to wake people up to this bullshit and get them fired up to fight back. I'm in. Let's light a fire under the asses of those in power and make them listen.
We can do this. We can achieve our goals, without resorting to violence. But we need to make our voices heard, loud and clear.
Fine. But we're not going to let those rich assholes get away with their greed and exploitation any longer. It's time for reckoning. But while we're waiting for the revolution, what can we do in our own lives to push back against this system?
That's where things get interesting. Remember all those industries catering to the ultra-rich, the luxury brands, the private jets, the diamond-encrusted everything. Well, we can choose to opt out of that bullshit.
So you're saying we should boycott Rolls-Royce and start riding bicycles?
It's about being a conscious consumer. Think about where your money goes and who benefits from your spending habits. Support businesses that align with your values, companies that treat their workers fairly, and operate sustainably.
So we can vote with our wallets and send a message to those greedy corporations.
Right.
I like it. It's a way to fight back without even leaving the house.
Every dollar you spend is a statement about the kind of world you want to create. By choosing to support ethical and sustainable businesses, you're making a difference.
Damn, that's deep.
Yeah.
I never thought about shopping as a form of activism, but it makes sense. We can all play a part in changing the system, even if it's just by buying fair trade coffee or supporting local businesses.
It's easy to feel powerless when you're up against the vast wealth and influence of the ultra-rich. But remember, we have power as consumers.
Yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed and just tune out. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is going to shit, and there's nothing we can do about it.
But the truth is, every action we take, no matter how small, can contribute to creating a more just and equitable world. Don't underestimate the power of collective action.
All right, I'm feeling fired up now. Let's go boycott some luxury brands and support some local businesses.
That's a good start. But let's not forget about the bigger picture. We need to keep pushing for systemic change, for policies that address the root causes of wealth inequality.
You're right. We can't just shop our way to a better world. We need to get political, organize,
Yeah,
and demand change from our elected officials.
exactly. We need to hold those in power accountable and create a system that works for everyone, not just the wealthy elite.
Okay, so we've talked about the economic and political forces at play, but what about the personal side of things? How does living in a world with such extreme wealth disparity affect us, on a psychological level?
That's a crucial question. It's not just about the material things. It's about how this insane level of inequality messes with our heads.
Yeah, I can imagine it's pretty damn depressing to constantly see those rich pricks flaunting their wealth while you're struggling to make ends meet.
It's more than just depressing. There's a growing body of research showing that exposure to wealth inequality can have serious psychological consequences.
Like what? Does it turn us all into envious, bitter assholes?
It can definitely fuel those feelings. Studies have shown that wealth inequality can lead to increased feelings of envy, resentment, anxiety, and even despair. It's like this constant reminder that you're not good enough, that you'll never have what they have.
It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to compare when you're constantly bombarded with images of the rich and famous, living their best lives.
Exactly. It's everywhere. Social media, TV, magazines. It creates this distorted reality where wealth and material possessions are the ultimate measures of success and worth.
So we're all brainwashed into thinking that if we're not rich, we're losers.
In a way, yes. It's this insidious message that permeates our culture, and it can be incredibly damaging to our self-esteem and overall well-being.
It's like we're all stuck in this never-ending rat race, constantly striving for more, more, more. But it never seems to be enough.
And the irony is, all this striving for wealth often comes at the expense of the things that truly matter. Our relationships, our passions, our mental and physical health.
So we're all chasing after this illusion of happiness, thinking that money will solve all our problems. But it's a trap.
Exactly. We've been sold this lie, that material possessions will bring us lasting fulfillment. But the research shows the opposite is true. People who prioritize experiences, relationships, and personal growth tend to be much happier and more satisfied with their lives.
So how do we break free from this materialistic mindset? How do we stop buying into this bullshit that's making us miserable?
It starts with awareness. We need to recognize the ways in which our culture is manipulating us, how it's constantly pushing this narrative that wealth equals happiness.
And then what? How do we deprogram ourselves from this consumerist brainwashing?
We need to actively cultivate values and practices that promote genuine well-being. That means focusing on gratitude, mindfulness, connection, and personal growth. It's about finding meaning and purpose outside of the material world.
Okay, that sounds a bit too touchy-feely for me. I'm not exactly the meditation type.
It doesn't have to be all about incense and chanting. It's about finding what works for you. Maybe it's spending more time in nature, pursuing a creative hobby, or volunteering in your community. It's about finding those things that nourish your soul and bring you a sense of purpose.
So you're saying that the key to happiness isn't a bigger bank account, but a richer life.
Exactly. True wealth lies in our relationships, our experiences, and our contributions to the world. It's about living a life that's meaningful and fulfilling, regardless of your net worth.
Damn, that's some profound shit right there. I'm starting to think you're a philosopher in disguise.
Perhaps. But the evidence is clear. Material possessions won't bring you lasting happiness. It's time to redefine what it means to be truly well.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light. But how do we apply all of this to our everyday lives? What are some practical steps we can take to navigate this fucked up world where wealth inequality is rampant and materialism is king?
That's a great question. And that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll talk about specific actions you can take to create a more meaningful and fulfilling life, regardless of your financial situation.
All right, so we've ripped apart the facade of these obscenely wealthy assholes, the HNWIs. We've seen how this fucked up system keeps funneling money to the top, leaving the rest of us struggling to make ends meet. And we've talked about how this insane level of inequality can, mess with our heads, making us feel like shit about ourselves and our place in the world. But now what? What can we actually do about it?
Well, it's easy to feel helpless, when you're facing this colossal monster of wealth disparity. But the truth is, we have more power than we think. We can start by refusing to play their game.
You mean like telling those Wall Street scumbags to go fuck themselves? I'm all for that, but I'm not sure it'll change much.
It's more about changing our own mindset and behavior. Remember what we talked about? Conscious consumption, supporting ethical businesses, prioritizing experiences over possessions. Those are all powerful ways to resist the siren song of materialism.
It's about hitting them where it hurts, their wallets. But what about the mental side of things? How do we stop comparing ourselves to those rich bastards and feeling like shit because we don't have a yacht or a private jet?
It's about shifting our focus inward, cultivating gratitude for what we do have, no matter how small it may seem, focusing on the things that truly bring us joy and fulfillment, our relationships, our passions, our personal growth.
Yeah, it sounds a bit cheesy, but I get it. We need to stop measuring our worth by the size of our bank accounts and start appreciating the richness of our lives. But let's get real for a second. Some of us are struggling just to survive, let alone find inner peace and fulfillment.
That's where community comes in. Connecting with others who share our values, supporting each other, and working together to create a more just and equitable world. It's about finding strength in numbers and reminding ourselves that we're not alone in this fight.
So it's about building a movement,
Yeah.
a collective force for change that can't be ignored. But how do we get people fired up enough to take action? Most folks are too busy struggling to make ends meet, to worry about systemic change.
It starts with raising awareness, spreading the word about the true cost of wealth inequality, and the insidious ways it affects our lives. We need to expose the myths about wealth and happiness, challenge the status quo, and inspire people to demand better.
It sounds like a tall order, but I'm starting to feel a glimmer of hope. If enough of us wake up to this bullshit and start pushing for change, maybe we can actually turn things around.
We can't afford to give up. The stakes are too high. We're talking about the future of our planet, the well-being of our communities, the mental and emotional health of generations to come.
All right, I'm officially fired up. Let's go rally the troops, spread the word, and start building a better world. But first, I'm grabbing a goddamn beer. Fighting the good fight is thirsty work.
I'll drink to that. And remember, it's not about becoming millionaires ourselves. It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their financial status.
That's a damn good point.
Uh-huh.
So there you have it, folks. Our deep dive into the world of HNWIs has taken us through the darkest corners of wealth inequality. But we've also glimpsed a path toward a brighter future. It's a future where wealth is measured by the richness of our lives, not the size of our bank accounts. It's a future where we prioritize people and planet over profit and greed. It's a future worth fighting for. Until next time, stay woke, stay engaged, and keep raising hell.